Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 17. I'm Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda, the Senate confirmed RFK Jr. as Health and Human Services Secretary in a vote of 52 to 48.
On which I'm about to enter, so help me God. So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
Senator Mitch McConnell was the only Republican to vote no, just as he did for Tulsi Gabbard yesterday. McConnell explained his opposition in a letter that cites RFK Jr.'s stance on vaccines as the reason why. Linda McMahon is Trump's nominee for Education Secretary, and she kicked off her hearing for confirmation today.
Department of Education was set up in 1980, and since that time we have spent almost $1 trillion, and we have watched our performance scores continue to go down.
Although McMahon has said that it would take an act of Congress to eliminate the Department of Education, she did stress that education would be better handled by the states than by the federal government. And the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to advance the nomination of Kash Patel as FBI director in a 12-10 party line vote. Now he'll move to a vote on the Senate floor sometime next week. Earlier today, President Trump announced reciprocal tariffs customized for each trading partner. Watch.
We'll be signing reciprocal tariffs. The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs that we haven't charged them. And as you know, I just did something on steel and aluminum, 25%. That'll go up at some point, but 25%, which will level the playing field quite a bit. I did it previously 50%. And Obama was very weak, and Biden was even weaker on steel.
One of the latest Doge investigations revealed that the Department of Defense paid Reuters $9 million for a social engineering and social deception project between 2018 and 2022. DARPA claims that the project was for cyber defense, but are we sure about that? This isn't the first time that we've heard about media companies taking money from the government. Blaze News called it all the way back in 2022 when it revealed that HHS had purchased advertising from major news networks like ABC, NBC, and CBS, cable TV news networks like Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC, and then publications like the New York Post, Los Angeles Times, and Washington Post. And this was done to publish nearly uniform information about the COVID vaccines and highlighting their safety and efficacy. And this investigation is playing out right in front of our eyes. Just before Doge uncovered the payments, Reuters ran a hit piece on Doge, prompting Elon Musk to post on Twitter, "I wonder how much money Reuters is getting from the government. Let's find out." And he certainly did. The Federal Communications Commission is going to probe the DEI practices at Comcast and NBCUniversal. Chairman Brendan Carr explained that these initiatives promote discrimination and have long been condemned by America's civil rights laws. And President Trump fired the inspector general responsible for monitoring spending habits at USAID after the numerous financial scandals that have been uncovered over the past few weeks. There's so much news going on. Let's go ahead and bring in Blaze News Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson and MP RFK Jr. He got through today, and we see that Blaze host Steve Deace is out there saying that this has the potential to be one of the most consequential picks ever in any administration. Do you think he has a point there?
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, first off, he represents a new coalition, right, of people who were formerly associated with the Democratic Party and the left, even by blood, joining the Republicans. But also, he represents the MAGA, Make America Healthy Again movement, which is an enormously unsung hero, right, in this entire election process. There's a lot of people who transcends old party lines who are very concerned with health in America, and it involves everything like the monumental, excruciating experience we all went through in COVID, which changed really everything, made people rethink everything. And as the truth has come out about that, it's just, that's the tip of the iceberg, really, for a lot of other things that need to be questioned in the healthcare industry.
And we look at Kash Patel advancing now to the Senate floor. A lot of the senators, I guess, want to go to Munich this weekend. So they're pushing Kash's confirmation vote just a little bit further down the line. Of course, we wouldn't expect anything different there from D.C. If you didn't watch it, and I'm assuming that a lot of people there in our audience didn't, there was a long diatribe of all the Democrats that they wanted to make sure that they got all their points in about Kash Patel and how they were not going to vote against him. It took 2 hours, and then they finally just voted on party lines, MP.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit of a sham, right? But I think the most concerning thing to me here is the delay. I mean, every time you delay, you make it more likely that they are able, to do some other shenanigans or pull something out and make a mountain out of a molehill. You got to get this done, and it's really despicable the way in which this is being kicked down the curb. It's bad.
And I really want to get your take on the government funding media, right? I don't think that the government should be funding any media, PBS, NPR. I don't want any of it, right? Like, just go ahead and go out there on your own. But now we see a Politico, a Reuters, all these different entities. And even as we said, that Blaze article back from 2022, and everybody had to say the same thing about the COVID vaccines. And we know now it's not even the truth. But when all of these companies are paid money by the government, it just shows you how much you still have to question everything that's out there in legacy media. Yeah,
I mean, it used to be, so if you go back to normal times, what you would say is, look, Reuters and, they're a big dog. They give a lot of this news to everybody. So, of course, you want an expensive subscription, right? Politico, they count stuff for you that you need, so you pay the subscription. But what you see happening in these cases is that they've turned obviously more partisan over time, and also they receive money for more than just subscription, and that subscription adds up, and you have to question, even the most normie interpretation of what happened with Politico. What extra cost, right, did they bear? I mean, they were just raking it in. And so it's always about follow the money. And I don't know why in America, media, we thought somehow was like separate from all this, that media somehow is, objective and fine. No, they're all influenced by, who pays the bills. And that's just obvious common sense. And it's a damn good thing that it's out in the open now.
Well, these bills are going to have to be paid with cash only. Chris Bedford is going to give us his latest on Kash Patel's confirmation process. Stay tuned. I don't know if you've seen the latest economic forecast. It's forecasting a depression, not a recession, a depression by the year 2030. It's going to be a perfect storm with Social Security and Medicare hitting a breaking point with the largest generation hitting retirement. So a smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. And when you pair that with our growing national debt, the rising cost of living, we have a pretty big problem. So what are you going to do now to protect your family for the future? Gold is a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify your portfolio and get your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold can help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. You can protect your future today by texting Jill to 989898 and get your free info kit on gold and the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with the forward written by Donald Trump Jr. So there's no obligation. You're only going to get information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings, and you can count on them too. Text my name, Jill, to the number 989898 today. We told you earlier, Kash Patel cleared a major confirmation hurdle with the Senate Judiciary Committee, voting to advance his nomination. And in his opening statement, Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley from my home state of Iowa told Patel that he would take charge of an FBI in crisis. So how might he do that? Here to break it all down for us is Chris Bedford, our Blaze senior politics editor. So Bedford, all right, we look at Kash Patel. What's he going to find when he walks into the FBI, assuming that he gets confirmed next week?
So before we get to what he's going to find, let's just talk about for one moment why he's being confirmed next week as opposed to on Saturday.
Yes.
Which is when they could absolutely be hosting this vote. But the U.S. Senate, Republicans and Democrats, decided they have their bags packed, their little overnight kits, and they want to go to Munich to play at the security conference, which, by the way, is like not even going to Munich. If you're going to go to Munich, I don't know, go to Oktoberfest, explore the city. But they're going on this little overnight field trip, getting their miles, hanging out and eating rubber chicken dinners and hotel rooms. I'm not even sure what the big draw of all this stuff is. I guess you get to meet famous people, or not even famous people, nerd famous people. The FBI needs to be reformed starting on Saturday, but whatever. As long as everything still continues, what Kash Patel is going to find inside Washington, D.C.'s offices is very different from what you see in Silence of the Lambs or any of the movies we grew up with. Remember the pictures of the FBI agents kneeling in front of screaming race mobs in Washington, D.C. after George Floyd's death? That was just a lot of pudgy women. It was just a bunch of college graduates, probably, I don't know, like writing majors. Who knows exactly what they were. They didn't look like law enforcement. They looked like they were campus hall monitors. Now, of course, that's not representative of the broader FBI, and it might not even be representative of everything that's going on in Washington, D.C., but it's an extremely politicized office, one that is now currently being looked at by Tom Homan for potentially leaking to the press about immigration raids, one that is more concerned with diversity, equity, inclusion, righting the wrongs, arc of history crap than they are with actually busting criminals or protecting American citizens. And of all the places in the FBI where there are lots of good people, D.C. is not really one of them. I mean, I know personally top agents who in the last few years have left in Washington, D.C., and they were like islands, always looking over their shoulders, always wondering when someone was going to realize that maybe they thought all of this was insanity. And that's what Kash Patel is walking into. And all these people have lines. They're going to go right to the U.S. Senate. They're going to go to the Democrats. They're going to go right to the New York Times. And they're going to act like this is some kind of unprecedented politicization because he's going to get rid of a lot of the politicization that has been in there. An FBI that's been going after investigating churches, going after Christians, going after peaceful pastors, going after trespassing grandmothers, seizing Lego kits as part of evidence of conspiracy to overthrow the government. A very deeply unserious, but at the same time, extremely dangerous people. And I remember, this is just slightly adjacent, but when I was reporting on some of the lies and the leaks coming out of the National Security Council, for example, in the intelligence apparatus, a person who I spoke to when I was getting close to the story was leaving, and he'd been there for years and years, and he turned around and said, make no mistake, if you report this, they will ruin your life. Now, I couldn't end up finishing the story. I worked on it. I didn't chicken out. But it was a very serious thing. So unlike messing with the Department of the Interior or messing with the Department of Energy even. I think messing with some of the intelligence operations that have been set up in the FBI and around there puts him in the crosshairs, and it's going to make Senate grilling look like child's play.
Well, I want to go back to Munich because once upon a time...
I want to go back to Munich.
I want to go back to the topic of Munich because I've never been to Munich, but I've always wanted to because once upon a time, a girl I hadn't talked to in a few years sent me an email when she was in Munich at a beer hall and said, Matt, I'm just reminded of you. You really should be
that
here.
Is romance.
I ended up marrying her, as it turns out. But I still have never been, so I understand why they want to pack their bags and go. But I just want to get clear on this delay. You don't think that this is going to mess anything up, do you? I mean, is this just a last second? Let's just drag the feet all the way to the finish line kind of thing.
It's always possible. I mean, Kash Patel had the most momentum of anyone. More difficult nominees to get past the U.S. Senate have gotten past. RFK and Tulsi Gabbard were more in danger. But I'll tell you, I mean, talking to a senior member of the team who's working with him shortly after he was passed out of committee, I said, congratulations on your win today. And he didn't feel like it was over. It was like someone had just hit the starting gun. Oh, you have to tread water or you have to maintain that marathon pace for another week. And it's true. Democrats tried their darndest. They tried everything they could. They threw it all at the wall to try and ruin Kash's life and to try and sink his nomination and to try to protect their sacred FBI, and it didn't work. But just like I got a piece coming out in the Beltway Brief tomorrow about what an actually good week it's been for Republicans and all the different advances that they've made on the budget and things, but that even at the end of those conversations, when I asked people familiar with the negotiations, so you guys feeling good? Is this going to happen? They just laughed and said, well, I mean, something awful's going to come down the road.
Well, Peterson, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So, if you haven't bought anything yet, maybe a flight to Munich for you and Mary could be something to think about. You know what? The exact opposite of romance is definitely Mitch McConnell. He is the guy that we love to hate on the show, if you will. He has now voted against 3 of Trump's picks in Hegseth, Gabbard, and RFK. Here's what the 47th president had to say about the octogenarian senator.
Well, I feel sorry for Mitch. And I was one of the people that led. He wanted to go to the end and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped 10 years ago, mentally, in my opinion. He'd let the Republican Party go to hell. If I didn't come along, the Republican Party wouldn't even exist right now. Mitch McConnell never really had it. He had an ability to raise money because of his position as leader, which anybody could do. You could do it even. And that's saying a lot.
I cannot hide my smile right now. That might be the best clip that we have played in a very long time. But we see Mitch McConnell. He's getting wheeled in and out of these confirmation votes, Chris. Like, how much time does this man actually have left in politics?
Every moment he has left, I think, on this earth, he'll have in politics. I mean, it's sad to think about, but remember Senator Kennedy just collapsing out of his chair in the Senate cafeteria. I mean, these guys do not want to leave. They will stay to the bitter end. This is their life. This is their identity. This is who they are. And, I guess he's probably not returning home to some kind of just magical family life. Maybe he prefers it here in cold Washington, D.C. But it's kind of wild. There's been a bunch of Republican senators, Rick Scott among them, Mike Lee, who've pushed back against Mitch McConnell for a long time and said, hey, guys, I don't think he's got our best interests at heart. I don't think he's a team player. I don't think he's a conservative in any stretch of by any stretch of the imagination. And they were kind of poo-pooed until the very end when it became obvious that he was just no longer mentally capable of even maintaining this visage. But now it's exposed. I mean, he's out there making the case every day for why Mike Lee was right, why Rick Scott was right, why all these people who said he's not with us were right. And I guess the only thing that really made him such a Republican in any kind of a modern sense, maybe in a Bushy sense, but in the new sense, was that he was the leader. And so I guess that made him, he's automatically in the club. You're kind of grandfathered in. But he's really, I think he's trying to say something about his legacy as some kind of like Phantom of the Opera. I'll stay here and haunt to make sure that my plays still get played and my music still gets played. But in the end, I think it is really injuring his legacy.
Well, that's actually very good to hear, because my question is, how can we fast forward? Can we press the fast forward button on a robust leadership that's outside of his shadow? I think we see some signs of that, but it just struck me for years. I mean, how do you get around this problem when the Senate leader has so much power? There's almost nothing you can do about it by virtue of their position. And you do have the Lees of the world, all these people who've been complaining about it for a long time. So what I'm hearing you say is, look, they're all being vindicated daily. Everyone sees this now. This is completely behind the times. But does that mean that we can accelerate change in the way leadership operates in the Senate in the next few years?
It helps. It helps the case. It makes it more difficult for the Senate, for Thune to really hold on. It makes that massive and extremely influential network of McConnell loyalists, advisors, that whole circle of money, it makes it less powerful, less influential, more toxic, easier to dismiss. The power, every time he does one of these no votes, or just becomes I know it's so weird to hang on into your advanced years just to become a protest vote. It's not even part of the winning coalition. And every time he does that, it makes that influence circle a little weaker. But at the end of the day, you still are going to need to root them out. They're not simply going to disappear. So if you're someone who's trying to if Mitch McConnell actually starts to mess with the President Trump's agenda in a way that starts to stop his ability to get things that he promised voters done, then I think you start to see a crackdown where people who are associated with McConnell or who hire his people, which are all over town, are not welcome in the White House, are maybe not even welcome in Thune's house, in Thune's office, who came up under him and shares a lot of his staff, shares a lot of his thinking. Once you start to see that kind of pressure push down on the money making and influence peddling, well, that's how you end up defeating McConnellism.
Well, we're all about downsizing the federal government here. And we saw today that about 75,000 federal employees took Trump on the buyout offer. Now, again, this is going to be well below the goal that they had, Bedford, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and it was definitely retarded by the judge's order, who had that order not come down to delaying this for a couple of days, and then people wondering whether it was illegal and what they were going to do. I think you would have seen even more people coming through in the last hours before midnight last week. That delay definitely cost them, but the wonder and the banter between federal employees here in Washington, D.C. right now was this the last helicopter out of Saigon? It wasn't a very comfortable trip to take. There wasn't a bed. You're not going to get, a first class seat. But was that something that they should have taken? And now will they end up being fired? A lot of folks are actually imminently fireable. The reason for that is because Joe Biden expanded the federal workforce by so much in his last year. I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of employees added to the federal rolls. And that means that in that first year, even by union rules, they are on probationary standards. And they can be let go based on that. You need to justify their existence, why they shouldn't be let go. But that's just the last year. So, that's showing you how crazy and how much the Biden administration enlarged government, how much government has been enlarged, that you can cut hundreds of thousands of jobs and you're just back to how many employees there were a year ago. It's kind of shocking. But it's also good. Some of them are trying to stick around and make themselves into a self-styled resistance. Other ones are authentically worried, and they ought to be, about how the heck they're going to maintain a standard of living, pay all the bills, whether they have college loans left, if they weren't one of the people who was forgiven by Joe Biden, the bills that their kids have, the different things. A lot of people have built their lives around this blob and not skills that are transferable to the private sector or really anywhere. They expect to have these privileges. They expect to be able to work from home. They expect to be able to take side jobs. They expect to never be fired, to be unfireable. And some people are just clinging on, I assume, because of that. And, those who are good and are useful will be kept on. And those who are adding nothing or who are actively undermining the American people, like so many, it turns out, have been, well, they should be afraid for their jobs over the next year or two.
They absolutely should be. And I'm sure that you're going to keep us well up to date on the traffic patterns, all the home prices in D.C., everything else.
It's supposed to get worse next week. Tens of thousands, 100,000 more people in Navy Yard who are forced to go to work for the first time.
No, Bedford.
Oh, yeah.
Without giving it away, can you give our audience a good tease for who you're going to be interviewing tomorrow without giving it away?
Oh, without giving it away? It's someone who, this is tough. She's smarter than me. She's cooler than me. And sometimes she even likes me.
That's incredible. I can't wait to see it. I'm very excited. Thanks so much, Bedford.
See you tomorrow.
All right. Our next guest will put the spotlight on Trump's best approach to hostile actors. Coming up. Well, most Americans have been aware of Anthony Fauci since the COVID pandemic really took off in 2020. But Dr. Richard Ebright, he's a molecular biologist from Rutgers University. He's had Fauci on his radar since the 2001 anthrax scare, after which Dick Cheney empowered him and NIAID with the authority and the funding for the biodefense once reserved solely for the Department of Defense. In the latest episode, you're going to see Matt Kibbe's documentary series, The Cover-Up. He joins Dr. Robert Ebright, and he goes through a series of embarrassments that begin with the recreation of the deadly 1918 Spanish flu, and it culminates with the coming of COVID-19. Together, Kibbe and Ebright connect the dots, they trace all the funding, and give you the answers that you've been demanding for years about the dark research, the fraud, the corruption surrounding Anthony Fauci and its fatal culture of hubris and grift that have left so much in destruction and all of this mistrust in its wake. You can see episode 4, The Cover-Up, Smoking Gun on BlazeTV. It's out now. Become a subscriber at FauciCoverup.com/mandate and use the code SMOKINGGUN for $30 off your subscription. It's FauciCoverup.com/mandate, code SMOKINGGUN for $30 off your subscription. Tonight in the Spotlight, we look at restoring the constitutional order in a Republican form of government. How should Trump respond to the lawfare from the Democrats and restore proper separation of powers? Matt Mehan is the Associate Dean of Hillsdale College in the D.C. School of Government, and he recently wrote about this for The American Mind, and he joins us now to discuss. And Matt, it's so great to have you on the show. You've known Peterson here forever. I got to meet you last time we were out in D.C., so it is great to have you here on the show. So what does Donald Trump need to do to combat all this lawfare out there right now?
Yeah, it's great to see you both. So he has to lay out a plan, or maybe Pam Bondi does at his direction, but he has to basically kind of give a way out of the lawfare which has a certain order to it. He has to put justice first, and then I think he has to really induce people to tell the truth. What did Shakespeare say? Twill out, the truth twill out. We have to have the truth, and only then can mercy or clemency be given. And then the promise of a kind of restoration of peace and normal relations where political opponents don't attack each other with the law and sick the law on each other like dogs, but instead use it fairly and have civil disagreement and debates and political arguments. And so I think you have to kind of have a beginning, middle, and end to the whole program.
Now, this is an incredibly important point because, well, all of us are riding pretty high right now. I sure am. I'm not sick of the winning. I'm enjoying it every day. There is the unfinished business. I mean, there's this looming question of a lot of injustice that has occurred over the last however many years. And, you know, as late, great Angelo Codevilla said, we're still in a cold civil war. And I worry that right now the right thinks we've won, when in fact this is still an extremely divided country, right? We need to press on ahead, but full and total victory would be restoring that constitutional order. So you've been out with this message, which is extremely, extremely important. And I just want to say at the outset, the problem, I presume you agree, is that if it is perceived by people as just one side punching the other, and the other side coming back, that's how things cycle and escalate and actually get worse in a situation in which none of us wants to be in. Is that right?
That's right. You get the sort of Hatfields and McCoys, clan warfare by party, and the destruction of the rule of law where it's equally applied to all. And then that's like late Republic. That's snakes in the bed. That's the murder of emperors. That's the loss of liberty and self-government and constitutional order. So we have to avoid that at all costs. And so punishing one's political enemies, which is what the Dems have been doing for a long time now, and then hiding in our rightful fear of looking like we're punishing our enemies and thus perpetuating the cycle that they've started, it's a real problem. And I think that the way out of it, in a sort of, I think, very important way, is you can't do the sort of Beria secret police, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. But you have to think about what crime should be a prosecutorial sort of feature of Pam Bondi's Justice Department, the DOJ, that will help sort of clear the air and restore a kind of proper order. And I think that's a big focus on perjury and subordination to perjury, Section 18 of the Federal Code. And if that is first and foremost, I think a number of salutary effects will follow that will, I think, sort of dragnet out some of the real malefactors who've been playing at this lawfare game, while not repeating the same kind of disaster on our side that they've inflicted upon us. And I can explain more about that, but I do think that's a key piece to this puzzle.
Well, let's explain. Well, let's go into that. Let's explain more about it because, you're saying, look, what's needed is justice, right, as opposed to retribution. In order to get that, you need to get at the truth. And so you have a lot of potential crimes and things you could do to punish wrongdoers. But what you're saying is go after perjury. Basically, does this mean go after lying and try to get people to have to say the truth?
I mean, you can see it as a general theme of this administration, frankly, from the inaugural address to the outing of USAID chicanery. It really has been let's stop lying to one another. And so I think that is a kind of way of saying, look, we don't want to attack you. We don't want to hear the wailing of your women and the burning of your villages, Democrats. What we want is to restore political friendship with you. While we disagree, we're going to disagree honestly with one another. And so if you put perjury down as a major prosecutorial focus, you do two things. One, you do that. You reestablish truth-telling against lies, which is the fundamental engine of all the lawfare. They can't get away with most of their little conspiracies without being able to lie to Congress, to depositions, and to the press. So you basically put a line in the sand. We're not going to lie anymore. Two, I think you think of all of the perjury potential that could be had in the testimonies of those who've been preliminarily pardoned by Biden, right? You've got Fauci and many other malefactors who've all been pardoned, which means they can't plead the fifth when they are put under oath anymore because self-incrimination doesn't lead to imprisonment. But they still could perjure themselves and lie, but they're not covered under those pardons for further perjury while under oath now. And so there's a double inducement to tell all the truth about the various lawfare conspiracies, the dishonesty, et cetera. And I think that's an enormous opportunity for them to basically face up to the law. And insofar as the law is reason, face up to right reason and realize that they have done something terrible and be forced into the public eye and face themselves in the mirror of public opinion, right? And then finally, hopefully with the specter of punishment, then ask for clemency under true terms, and then I think ideally be granted it. I think that process is a way of humiliating them in such a way that they are ashamed for their wrongdoing, right? Punishing those who are so far gone that they will play the martyr and lie and continue to perjure themselves, but also setting and reestablishing what is in the inaugural oath: good faith, bona fides. It is the absolute foundation of all justice that what we say is what we mean, and what we say is what we do, and what we do is what we say, right? Like, this has got to be taken care of, and there's no better way than to focus on perjury, I think.
I love that you go through perjury and the fact that, because all this is going through and we're trying to get to justice, right? True justice and what that actually means. And with the Democrats going through and saying, oh, Anthony Fauci, you're preemptively pardoned. It's okay. Everything's going to be fine. It's actually going to be the Achilles heel that could come through and actually restore some truth and justice for the American people, right? It's the one thing that we're actually really striving for from the public, because we haven't seen this done in so long, Matt.
Right. And it's establishing justice for the American people with an understanding that the widest form of justice includes some clemency and restoration of peace and friendship, even among the parties. And I think it's important for Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, for all of them to say, this is actually for your good, too, lying, lawfaring, sneaking Democrats, right? This is good for you to fess up, right? Get your hand out of the cookie jar and tell mom and dad what you did wrong. Everyone's watching at home. Let's just be honest, right? I actually think that is extremely important for them and for us to have a country again.
Okay, so, I mean, let's stipulate for the record that no matter what Trump and Pam Bondi do, the left is going to be screaming about how, mirabile dictu, the government's being weaponized. I mean, we know that that's going to happen. They're already saying it. They were very fearful of Trump taking over because he might weaponize the DOJ, right? So we know that they're going to say that. Maybe walk through with some examples, if you could, of how this might work. I suppose those people are never going to change their minds, or the partisan hacks, the really bad people out there. But it strikes me that what you're describing is the court of public opinion changing on this, and at least coming to some sort of majority consensus as a people that these things were bad, they have been dealt with, and now we're moving on.
Yes, I think that's right. Look, to be just, you also have to appear just. And so I think it in one sense, the lying media is losing influence, as you well know, BlazeTV being a perfect example, right? New media is able to set a new kind of consensus, right? And so their lies, I don't think, will be as strong as they once were. And so it's up to basically the Trump administration to lay out a kind of apology for itself. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And so particularly, I would say they need to pick cases where the facts without the confession are very clear. And once that's established, then it's an easy inducement. You need to just tell the truth. Cough this up. Now, if it's someone who's already been preemptively and unjustly pardoned, well, now it's the court of public opinion and they have to basically confess and purge themselves publicly. If it's someone who isn't under that dragnet of the preliminary pardons from Biden, well, then they have the specter of a real prosecution and prison time for perjury, but with the promise that, look, all you have to do is confess to all this that we've already proven to the American people, right, through the fact patterns. You just need to come clean. And then, yes, we will commute sentences. You will time served. We will treat people, in a very clement fashion. Trump has always been that way. I think his natural autopilot setting is actually a kind of huggy bear businessman who wants people to love himself, love each other, and get on, having a good time in life. I think it suits him. But I also think, like, if he does this, it will be a golden age of justice because it will be tinctured by mercy, and the appearance of justice will match justice being done, right? It won't be this division between fake justice and real injustice being done, nor will it be a kind of ecstasy of like, we're going to get everybody and get them and squeeze them all, which I'm sorry, that will look unjust to the American people, even with a good new media consensus building. So I think we have to, A, get it right on the merits, and B, then rely on the good common sense of the American people and new media to help develop a consensus where it's like, yes, these people have been dealt with justly and mercifully. And so we will not tolerate any further reprisals. This is how things will be done, and we'll go back to making America great again in this form of justice.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. It does suit Trump himself. He's going to fight hard. He's going to come back at you. But then he does have this quality of saying, okay, this is over now, and we can be friends. As he said once on a network I won't name, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have any friends. So I have to forgive them in the end and bring everything back. That seems plausible to me. So 60 seconds we have left. How likely do you think that this is? Is the Trump administration showing any signs that they're moving in this direction?
I've been talking with people in the administration. I think this argument is a serious one that they're taking seriously. I heard in Pam Bondi's testimony good signs that she was going to be very seriously focused on a kind of restoration of good faith. She used the term herself. And that she was going to sort of make that a focus of her administration as Attorney General. So I'm very hopeful that this is a kind of, in one sense, a layup. Like, this is a feature. Obviously, she has to do everything else. But this should be a kind of apple of the eye and should be put in the forefront of everyone's minds, that perjury and lying is no longer acceptable because that's how lawfare is done.
Absolutely. Very well said. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. Just a very thoughtful conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you both.
Peterson, when we look at it, it is such an important topic because, right, we want the wins. We want that red meat. We want everything. But to do it the right way, you don't want to go through and, 10 years from now, just say, oh, there's actually further division because of the way that you set out to solve the problems that are clearly problems right now. Yeah,
it's a very important point. And it doesn't mean to stop winning. I mean, he's saying prosecute, like bring justice to the situation. But remember that when you do that, you have to do that with an eye to the public and say, we're going to restore trust in these institutions. We don't want it to be back and forth, people just flinging stuff at each other. And that means don't give the other side the opportunity to make that case too, right? Convince the people who are able to be persuaded right now that this is really a restoration of justice by forcing people to tell the truth. It's a cogent argument. It's a good argument, and he's a good cogent guy. So
yes, and we'll have your thoughts on the brand new Justice Department right after this.
This is a new DOJ, and we are taking steps to protect Americans, American citizens, and angel moms, like the mom standing right behind me, who you're going to hear from in a moment. New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today.
Well, we're talking about justice today on the show, so I wanted to ask you what you think of the new DOJ. And the answers came in on X. Hammer said their actions speak louder than their words, MP.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want show, don't tell. And by actively, taking action like she just did there, she gave a lot of people confidence that this entire time moving forward, she's going to be moving and shaking.
Uncommon Joyce replied, "Don't stop, investigate, arrest, try, convict, imprison. As long as the statute of limitations hasn't expired, go back 20 years. Fast and Furious, Hillary's personal servers, Crossfire Hurricane, Steele dossier, Fauci, this list keeps going on. All the evidence needs to be made public, and people need to be let out in handcuffs and their mugshots published, and cameras need to be in the courtrooms during the trials."
Well, I don't think he has an overactive imagination. I think he's just crying out and describing what we all want in our hearts. We had a great conversation with Matt Mehan earlier about this. Justice is coming. Justice is required. And, transparency, these things are required in order to get to the point where we trust the institution again at all. So, yes.
That is absolutely correct. And Mocha Sam kind of echoes that. The most impressive quote was near the end of the press conference. The statement similar in thought to, "We don't want to take you to court. We want you to follow the law." It was simple and straightforward. That's how real Americans think and reason.
That goes right to the heart of what Professor Mehan was saying earlier. This is not about wanting to punish and take you to court exactly. This is about establishing the rule of law and fairness again in America. It is called the Department of Justice for a reason, and that has to mean something moving forward.
We have strayed so far away from that even just the thought of having actual justice, actual fairness in the law, that blind system of justice, it's so far away right now. And that's why we get the answers that we do.
Yes, this is the real damage of the last 8 years, right? The real damage was there still was a fundamental belief that America was different, and there we massive differences and whatever and changes, but there was an underlying rule of law. And that was a concept in people's heads at the least. And that's how they thought about the Department of Justice at the end of the day. And that's gone now. So to rebuild that is one of the most important things we can do, because if we don't do that, we will not have a country. We need a united citizenry.
And leave us today with acting like winners, because that's something we definitely need to do right now.
Here's something that the right has a big problem with, because not everyone is as winning as everyone else on the right, and the right has lost for a long time. Let's be honest about this. Moving forward into the golden age, it's going to become essential that the right acts like winners. What do I mean by that? It's not, it's not an attitude. It's something that you do. It's something you manifest. It's a behavior. And what we need to drop now that the right is ascendant and not just some minority party is the insecurity and the references to the left in everything that's written and in everything everyone talks about. Just be the leader. What do I mean by this? Well, we'll take something that's not political at all. Look at culture, technology, all the issues that are there. At Return and Align, our tech and culture outlets at Blaze, we're going to be focusing on the issues that matter to you in technology and the cultural stuff that you're interested in without referencing the left. What does that mean? That means we're just talking about the stuff. The principle is similar to this. Oh, this is a great conservative movie. Is it a good movie, though? Just tell me if it's a good movie, right? That's the situation we're in now. We don't need to be constantly referencing the left or saying, oh, gosh, this person from the New York Times or from Hollywood is now converted and come over. Who cares? That's great. That's wonderful. But why do you need validation from these institutions? We don't need validation from these institutions anymore. These institutions and businesses have failed. They've failed you. They've failed me. They've failed to do their job. They're failing now. They're losing money because they don't do good stuff. They don't do good work. So moving forward, what the right needs to do is start thinking about how do you just do the thing? How do you make the art that matters? Just do that. You don't have to reference the left at all. What are the deepest questions we can ask, and the important questions we need to ask about technology and AI, the sorts of statements and themes and thoughts that the Vice President of the United States just uttered in France, a very interesting speech by J.D. Vance. Just start talking about that. What should happen? What should technology do? don't bother to get in the fight with losers, because that's not what winners do.
I look at the leftists. It's a very leftist thing to do, to put all of the descriptors before you say the thing, right? I'm a gay, transsexual, pan-lizard person.
Exactly.
And because I am that, then I have the authority to tell you X, Y, and Z.
Yes,
right? That's what they want to do.
Yes, and our response is, I don't really care, Margaret. Like, just ignore that stuff. What we need to do is, when we speak, get rid of that part of it, right? Just say what you're going to say. And when it comes to cultural criticism, when it comes to underlying questions about art, about entertainment, about recreation, about technology, about business, the articles that we publish, for instance, don't have to have left and right and blah, blah, blah. We just want to report the news, right? I mean, you're winning if you have a sports section that doesn't talk about wokeness in sports, but people come to because they actually just want to check the box scores. That's what winning is. And it's not that we don't have to still attack and get in disputes and point out all the bad things that are happening, but it means that we need to actually have a robust ecosystem on the right where we're simply doing the job, starting the business that provides the goods and services, and we don't have to say this is conservative.
And we can keep all the government funding out of it, right? From all the stories that we've had earlier today, we don't need any of the government funds to make sure that these projects happen.
No government funding required, right? But also no grifting off of saying, like, if you're a Republican, you need to do this, right? Just do it. And you can see people moving in this direction. It's very exciting to me because it just transcends, politics. It means you really are ascendant and you're just making the products that actually help people. You're just advertising to people based on what's truly good for them, and you're providing them with things you want. And as a conservative, media company, conservative media ecosystem, we need to get into that space and not be looking back, at the left or having insecurity about these old corporations and cultural institutions that have lost their way a long time ago and don't matter anymore. There's a lot of work to do to build the future. So let's do that and not focus on the ankle biters along the way.
And there are so many good examples right now of acting like winners that are now in Trump's cabinet, right? The way that they have come through and just hit the ground running and saying, we have all these ideas already. We are going to implement the mandate and get things going immediately. And we don't really care what you think.
Yes. Trump himself is leading the charge here, and his administration is following him in an incredible way. It's one of the most heartening things I've ever seen in my entire life, because we do see them getting into the administration with a positive plan, goals to actually do things, and they're just focusing on that. And increasingly not dealing with the media's, bitey little, you're losers. We're done. We're actually doing things over here. Adults are talking.
Yeah. All the I don't really care, Margaret merch is all up at Blaze Media right now. You can go get it. Thanks for watching tonight's show, everybody. We'll be back with, I'm sure, a crazy Friday, because they always are around here. We'll see you then.
Ending with the merch.